You're good.
I'll call the General Services Committee meeting to order. Can I get a motion to accept the April 19, 2022 meeting minutes as recorded?
I will.
Second by Josh. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. We have now 3 presentations on for today. First one is the Central Lewis Water Study with Miller Engineers. All right, go ahead, the floor is yours.
Come up or here or?
Wherever you want to go.
Come on down. All right.
Hey, how is everybody?
Good.
Good. My name's Doug Miller. I'm here just to give an update of what we've been doing with the water study. We're making good progress. We still got a ways to go. But I think we're at a good point to give you some updates here. So we're into phase, and I'll try to push this along as quickly as possible, and then open up for discussion at the end. So we're into phase 2 of the work. Phase 1 was basically assessment of some of the northern towns, and we looked at water quality, water quantity, operational aspects of those type of things in phase 1. Phase 2, the last couple of months, we've tried to focus on well evaluations, potential water wholesaling. We've looked at some different areas for interconnects. We've looked at integrating some of the thoughts into the southern towns. We looked at some existing favorable water zones, low, medium, and high yielding wells. And I've got a slide up here that we'll get into that'll show you some of the spots that we look at, and that's all in the whole county. We've mapped some aquifers, and mapping the aquifers, we've also been able to locate what we believe are some high yield wells. What we've also found is in doing our reconnaissance, it's pretty consistent with the other reports that you've seen. The Bergman report, the Clark-Patterson report, so we're not really finding any anomalies, which is kind of what we expected, and it's kind of what we reported before. That, you know, it's consistent, the reports that you've done in the past build off this report, so, you know, from our perspective, we feel that things are moving in the right direction from where we last left off. So we've done some hydrology, some of the things that we've taken into account. Safe drinking water information systems we've used. We've talked to regional agencies at the DOH and the DEC. We did get a little bit of a snag if any of those are dealing with regulatory agencies. We did, in order to get some detailed information, we foiled the DEC for a lot of information, and they've been very sluggish and slow in giving us that information, but we have it now. But that's consistent across the board with what we're seeing with a lot of the other activities. We looked at water withdrawal reports. We've talked with we have a hydrogeologist that we're working with through our WBE program, and he has contacts with some of the regional geologists. So we're confirming our information with theirs so that there's no anomalies as we move forward. And we've done some site reconnaissance. Specifically, we're still looking at some sites, but we have been. We looked in detail at the Wood Battle site in Copenhagen, the Stoddard site. We went over to Watson. We've been to Harrisville, Krogan, Lowville, and things are looking like, you know, we have data that will be consistent to share with you. Basically speaking, the preliminary feedback that we're getting, that I think the answer is yes. It does look like we could do wholesaling of water, and what we've looked at is basically 3 different regions. I'll show you on the map. It would be a northern zone, a central zone, and a southern zone, and that would be a great place to start to do some water wholesaling for the entire county. So that's the map that I think was in our last report. And if you look, you know, this was pretty basic. you know, some of the larger well fields that we were looking at, you know, here, just up in Denmark and over here, New Brennan area. But I think the thing that starts to get interesting to me is that this is a map of all the wells in the county, 0 to 1,000 GPM. So this is a database that we started from. It's a little bit blurry. Maybe you can see it if you had a color slide, and we can. Cassie's got this in better detail. But this is where we started, and then where we've been able to go is to a map that looks like this. And I know it's a little bit hard to see here, but basically all the colors that you see on here, those are what could be seen as favorable aquifers. And the different colors are just because they're different geological deposits. So, you know, none of these are bedrock, but, you know, in the northern areas, you might have a little bit of limestone. Coming off this area here, coming like off the Adirondacks, you get more glacial and sand. But it's tough to see in here. But we've also mapped, if I highlight, it's tough to see that. But we've mapped that last, this map showed all the wells. In here, inside the different aquifers, we've been able to map the medium to high yield wells, and they're 300, a minimum of 300 GPM, which would correlate to 400,000 gallons of water a day. So if you look, yeah, this is great. So you see like the arrows type things. So you've got some in the southern zone, you've got some in the central, and you've got a couple, up in the Denmark area.
So basically, you're saying those are proven sources of high yield water.
They appear to be, yes, Ryan, right? So we need to do a little bit more research, but it's looking pretty good that you could potentially set up some regional wholesaling activity, and that's what we were trying to accomplish. So, I mean, it's kind of nerdy, but I think, when our geologist Jerry started putting this together, this was kind of, from our perspective, was kind of cool, right? It kind of tells the story that, yes, there's potential there, right? A little bit more legwork to do, but, you could have 1, 2, 3 areas, and they could be in different areas, inside those areas, there could be a couple different spots that we might want to focus on more as we move forward. But as we talked the last time we met a few months ago, the opportunity's there, and I think, this is a great opportunity to start wholesaling and to try to develop some type of cooperative to help the communities with water throughout the region. So, when we talked about the water wholesaling, regional water cooperative, here's a mission statement, to try to provide, good potable water with a collaborative group. But I think when we go back to that other slide, the place to start is with the wholesaling. I mean, it's pretty basic, and it's to be a basic place to start.
So the basic concept here is that the county would find the water sources, dig the wells, treat the water, and get it to the municipalities. So we'd have to, have a few people on staff with water licenses, we'd have to do quite a bit of infrastructure work. But we would sell to the villages and towns, that way their DPW guys wouldn't need to worry about the quality of the water. They wouldn't have to worry about managing well fields or surface water, sites. The county would do all that. Their own DPW would then be in charge of the water lines in their village, water meter, direct customer service. They're gonna have to handle all the billing to, to each of the households. But we would basically be doing the heavy lifting part, which is finding the water, treating the water, and getting it to the villages, basically. Is that a good summary?
Yep, that's a good segue into this slide, right? You know, just like Brian said, these are the type of things, the first thing would be the wholesaling, and then, you know, we could assist the communities on best practices or consolidated funding, or purchasing power, right? I mean, they could, we could, you know, I see Mr. Hunt here, right? I mean, you know, work off of different things in the highway department, potentially, right? And just, you know, interconnect with, different charges along those ways, with regulatory compliance, operator training, you know, I mean, but what we had talked about is, you know, these systems that we've looked at so far, they're run efficiently, they're run well, but, you know, there's some things that if you got into the wholesaling, that you could work as a cooperative. But leave everybody their autonomy because it seems to be working well and efficiently. That was pretty much about it. 10 minutes. How about that?
Very good. Any questions from the committee?
So yeah, I mean, if anybody's got any questions or anything, let us know. Well, obviously, we have some other slides that go into more detail, but I thought this, you know, this was a good place to give an update and tell you what's going on.
Thank you very much.
So we did, you know, set this as one of our goals for this year to, you know, finish the phase 2 and figure out if there are some opportunities for the county to move things along. So I have a question, and, you know, what, Doug, in your opinion, comes next, you know? What are the next steps that the county, you know, needs to take if we're gonna be serious about wholesaling?
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously, we've got a little bit more detail to do here. You know, and then we can kind of, you know, pick out a few of the areas that we think might be the wells or the aquifers to spend a little more time on. And at that point, it may make sense to, you know, sink a well or two and see what type of actual yield we really get out of that well. And not too far behind that, I think that we should be talking about a cooperative and, you know, the, what do I want to say? Just how we would set that up, right? Whether that's bylaws or whatever. But, you know, something that could work for everybody, but with a mind on the wholesaling. And once we had the wholesaling as the part of the cooperative, then as you move forward, it could morph into other things like, you know, assistance with regulatory issues or funding. But I think the main thing that we focused on here is get 2 to 3 wells, get some, we're gonna need some type of an MOU or cooperative to be able to put a well in the ground and then, you know, send water. In some places, it may be to 2 or 3 different communities. In some places, it, you know, maybe 1 or 2. But, you know, in order to do that, it's gonna have to go across different political boundaries, and that would be the formation of the cooperative. And it could start with just a simple MOU. Here's an MOU, you know, you've seen them as simple as 1-pagers, some of them. I mean, it's not much more than that, I don't think, right?
Yeah, so it'd be, you know, quite an investment on the part of the county, but I think it's something interesting for us to have all of our facts together, understanding exactly what it is, you know, we're gonna get into potentially, and then at that point, I guess the board can make a decision. So how much longer do you think before, you know, this board really needs to get together, or we need a spin-off committee or something that really, you know, the county's ready to take some formal action?
Let's say a couple more months.
Okay.
That sounds reasonable?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. And you know, the thing is, you know, we mentioned in here and we had discussion with, you know, some of the county representatives that, you know, when we got into this next phase, we've got a sub-consultant that's a minority business, and they were new to the process. So they've been looking at the hydrogeology, they've been looking at the reports independent of what we looked at. And Jerry Gould, who's the hydrogeologist, you know, he calls me up and, you know, we got this team and, they're a sub-consultant, but we work on projects all over the place. And he's like, Doug, I've read all the reports and the reports were all spot on. And that's what we talked before, that, the money that the county has spent to date, it just keeps building on itself. That, hey, Horst Patterson was right, Bergman was right, HydroSource was right. So, we're finding the same things that, everything that you've done so far is building on where you are now. Kind of like we talked last time, right?
Good.
So with that, if any questions? That's great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next presentation, Motorized Recreation Road Fund, Jackie.
So you can tell me no.
Would it shorten your piece if I did?
No. So we're here to talk about a motorized recreational road fund. So we've come up with a proposal to create a $200,000 motorized recreational road fund from sales tax revenue that can be used to reimburse the towns and villages within the county if they adopt an intermunicipal agreement to help cover any material costs from damages to the roads from recreational vehicles. We all know motorized recreation is a very large part of Lewis County sales tax revenue. Snowmobiling, based on Camoins study on Tug Hill, generates roughly $6 million in sales tax if you take a third. That's over $2 million for Lewis County, roughly. Off-highway vehicles, so ATVs, dirt bikes, side-by-sides, according to Camoins study, generates over $662,000 in sales tax revenue. So we know the popularity of motorized recreation is increasing. We are seeing huge increases in our permit sales. We're seeing high volumes of traffic on the hill. We're seeing an increased number of local events. So that, along with the new trends for marketing for bigger, better, faster equipment, is impacting the roads in Lewis County. Road damage, we've all seen it, heard about it. Villages, towns, even the county has addressed some of the issues. They've been documented throughout the years due to recreation. I apologize, I didn't have more pictures. This is what I had in my arsenal, but snowmobiles, trails that cross paved roads, the studs dig in, rip up the stuff. And so that's another area of concern. The idea of this would be to establish the fund on a yearly basis and then maintain it. So using sales tax money with the agreement with the towns and villages. The details of that are not all clear. That would still need to be, fleshed out, finalized. But the idea was, if a town comes to us and says there's damage on the road due to recreation or event, that they could get reimbursed for the materials to repair it. If it's for an event, obviously before and after pictures, so it's not just weather related. There would have to be some justification with it. Whoops. Sorry. Jumping ahead.
This is the one presentation I did not review before.
You
like
You're
your
doing
picture.
great, Jackie.
So you throw it on me and then, yeah, this is what you do. Yes. So anyways, the idea would be to document locations, because if it's a consistent spot where there's current problems, was the road built into the shape it should be? It would have to be reviewed. It wouldn't just be assigned to check over. We thought about creating a fund committee with
Was that a fund for you or a FUN?
Both. So obviously it would be the superintendent of highways, the director of recreation and parks, county attorney, and the county manager. The idea of this would be that it would create working relationships with the towns and villages about the importance of motorized recreation in Lewis County. It would reduce the burden of them for any damages caused, and it would make it easier for us to promote and grow our outdoor recreation as we go through the years. So that's all I have. Wanted to keep it short and sweet so I could answer questions. Just kidding.
You referenced towns and villages. You didn't say anything about private property.
We hadn't really addressed that. The topic had come up because of the different events and different damages that we're seeing on a yearly basis. Tim was hearing a lot at the Association of Superintendents. That's kind of how this all got started. I don't know if this is a proposal. We can scope it out, do whatever you want.
I would just add that I know, Jackie's crew, every year when they can, they go into any of the private landowners that we have an access agreement with and fix up parts of the trail if she gets word from them that there's some kind of damage, and that actually comes from the trail fund, doesn't it, Jackie?
Yes, so the ATV side of it is already taken care of.
Okay.
But snowmobile, it's your choice. We can make this whatever you as a group decide you want it to be. But the idea is to create the fund. We can set the parameters or the scope of it to whatever you would like. The idea was just to get everybody talking, to discuss it.
Is this kind of a reaction to the snort run activities?
Some because of just the regular damage. Snowmobiles with the studs, everybody's drove across one. You can see the damage physically. And the towns are bearing the brunt of that. And Tim's had other complaints as far as recreation, playing in the ditches, different things that happen, the groomers coming out on the road, leaving snow or other obstacles, it's just, it's our way to try to give back. And they're always saying they don't get enough of our sales tax. This would be sales tax, that would be going to them.
We're unique, and I think everybody on the committee knows, but, Lewis County doesn't share any sales tax with our towns or villages. Most counties do, most are required to. We're not, because we don't have a city. We get so much benefit in terms of our sales tax revenue. Like you said, all that activity, that goes right into the county coffers, but it's not just the county that ends up shouldering that expense. So
Right.
that was kind of our thinking, I think, with the, setting up this fund and then making it geared toward the municipalities in order to.
Right, and it could be expanded even beyond, what our original discussion was as far as road damage. It could include signage. We have quite a few of the towns that ATV signs disappear every year. So, it's something else that might help them. It might be, we could work together in a partnership to sign the destinations better, do wayfaring signs so that the town would install them, but we would supply them. It's just, there's a lot this could turn into, but this is an open discussion, so.
So who would take an ATV sign?
So you got me.
I'm weird, and I wouldn't do that.
You don't have one at your camp?
No.
Just kidding.
We should make them for sale on our website so people can buy them.
Specialty vanity license plates, there you go.
Jackie, one thing we talked about was using it for events, and that can be pretty easy. You go out, take a picture of where it's all torn up after
Right.
weekend. Would normal wear and tear be covered by something like this too?
I don't think wear and tear, but specific damage sites, if you go back to the damage one, this is snort.
That was right after.
And it was
Okay.
2019 when It was the perfect storm. We had snow on the roads right up till the night before, 3 inches of rain, and everything went out the day of the snort. So, you know, the event can't control that, the town can't control that. It might help offset costs, you know, and the idea wasn't to reimburse them for their equipment time. You know, it's just materials to help the basics on repairs.
So if damage is done through snort, why aren't they responsible for footing the bill? Don't they have insurance?
They do have insurance, but insurance has gotten to be very hard to acquire. And if anybody in the county ever uses it, it'll never be offered to anybody in the county ever again. The idea of the insurance is more liability than actual road damage. You know, that's why this year's, I will say, Snowpal's really stepped up their game on snort. They do open discussion with everybody, and the towns dictate which roads they would open for it. So this year was great interactions. The towns know where, you know, they're gonna have some damage or where they'll have the least damage by opening it, but you never know.
And Andrea, I think to your question, the event law that we're gonna be looking at today and in July as well, that does require them to have insurance for those events with a certain number of people in them. But like Jackie said, if we tap into that and we put in a claim for property damage, they may never be able to get insurance again, but it's there if we had to.
But the people putting on the function are making money,
Sure, yeah.
so why can't they be responsible? I mean, why do we in Watson pay for all that's going on the hill?
You know, one of the things you have to remember along that line, Andrea, is that Snow Pals is a 501c3 that grooms a lot of the snowmobile trails on Tug Hill. So the money they make off the snow run just gets recycled back into equipment and fuel to groom the trails.
And another way to look at it is that event brings so much sales tax revenue into this county. It's taking some of that to put back.
And they're not waiving liability too. They could be sued potentially by anybody.
Right.
Is there any thought of the county taking over the snort run?
No.
Please no.
I mentioned that because
I love that.
I would think they were making a large portion of that $200,000 that you're asking taxpayers to fork over.
Yeah, but this is a general, this is not just snort, this is
Oh, I understand that.
year-round, any issue, snowmobile related.
I know that,
ATV.
but I'm asking why wouldn't the county consider taking over that? You've got the infrastructure to sell the permits.
We have,
They're
so,
helping, they're using county roads.
we have talked a little bit about that in the past. I mean, after 2019, you know, there's a lot of discussion about how could things go differently. Ultimately, you know, kind of everybody was of the same mind that, you know, snort has been relatively successful and safe and has not done a lot of damage. It was only 1 year out of, you know, the 15 they've been going. If we could have tighter controls over the roads that are used, you know, they have to have plan A, plan B, all the things that they have stepped up to help with this year. We're hoping that will avoid the 1 in 15 disaster that we had in 2019. But, you know, that is something that has been discussed.
I'm just thinking there's a lot of money that would go to the county to cover the costs of the damage that we're talking about. So you're taking the money from the source potentially that's causing it and applying it back. And not
I think-
So this-
asking taxpayers to
The one
cover it.
thing you gotta remember is snort is a fundraiser for their club to make money, because what parks pay them does not cover all their expenses. A lot
Right,
of
but-
it's volunteer.
I understand that, but you've got how many clubs in this county, and one club is basically reaping that benefit.
Right.
Where if the county takes it over, it kind of helps everybody.
You
Well,
couldn't call
I
it
think, you
snort.
know, you need to
Because it's
remember
trademarked.
that Snort Run started as a very small thing. And it's just blown up. So if we go down the road of taking over the SNRT run, does that set us up to take over every fundraiser that every club wants to have?
Sure.
No, but this is the major one that the county is looked at having.
So,
There's
so Jeff-
nothing else on the horizon that you see that looks anything like.
Buck
Smith.
Run is getting them.
Buck runs up.
yeah,
I'm just saying, I would think that's a potential for
We've kind
source
of,
of revenue helping to cover the cost, and not just going to one specific organization that's reaping a very large benefit. Yes, they're doing work, but on the other aspect, you're asking the county to pay to cover the cost of that.
So one thing, and I don't disagree with any of that. We're talking, I don't know if it was completely clear, but we're talking about setting $200,000 aside one time, and then as it gets drained down, replacing. So it's not, hopefully, good Lord, hopefully, not $200,000 a year in the budget. I'm thinking it's, this 200,000 will last us 3-4 years would be my hope.
Yeah, for instance, this year, the SNRT run had record numbers and
No
there wasn't any damage. There were no claims. The only year that we really had claims that were big was 2019.
Yes, 19 was the bad.
And sort of in response to Phil's question, is this a response to that year's damage? And yes, to a large degree it is. And the response was to the towns, not really, we didn't really have any private damage. It was all the 3 or 4 towns that are on the hill complaining that we got sales tax from it. And, so the whole town, the whole county benefited, all the businesses, or at least the businesses that are in the recreational business, all, they all got something out of it, and the towns felt like they were, holding the bag for all this damage without any participation from the other businesses or the county. So, with Phil's question about, do we want to open this up to include private damage? Well, right now, we maintain the trail system with the fund from the ATV permits, and that does not only the private, but it also, that's how we maintain our county portion of the system, so.
I wasn't suggesting that, I
No, I'm
was just
just-
questioning.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not
it's a good
I'm
discussion.
not criticizing it, I'm just throwing out some
Well, I just wanted to be
brainstorming
clear.
here. If we want to go down that road, that's some of the things we need to.
I think the other issue at play here is that after 2019 SNRT, several of the towns, well, there was a momentum for some of the towns to pass their own event laws so they could charge in order to offset some of this cost. What we don't want, at least in my opinion, in Lewis County, is a patchwork of event laws where anytime anybody wants to do something countywide, they have to visit 5 different town boards. We want to be the ultimate
So
responsibility.
those towns ought to work together.
Right, but that's where you could do
Not the whole county, but
our
those
event
towns.
permit could be adoptable. That's why one of the things that been brought up about being adoptable by the towns. We still, anybody who applies for ours, we send it to all the towns that are involved, but it doesn't include the town roads, so it might need to address, if they're adopting it, then it would include those, and we would have be able to have more safety controls.
Yeah.
We notify the sheriff, emergency management,
Jackie, speaking of the sheriff, quick question for you. To go up before, how come, we haven't looked at, and before these smaller individual towns do it, I know there is talk about it, and they're gonna get smarter than what we are, is what Hatfield McCoy's did. Remember, there are towns that are involved in that organization, and those individual towns went ahead and formed Hatfield McCoy's, made that company up. So in other words, the towns now took the land that they had, incorporated it into their hotels, their restaurants, and you ride from each town to town just with the ATVs. Well, guess who got all the money now? The towns did. And I just think maybe there should be discussion with the town fathers there maybe, and see what you might want to avoid or start, as we have to employees did, to keep the revenue within the county and to share that, because the town's gonna get smart, there is talk. And when they visit that area, and they figure out how it's run, and then they decide to go ahead and say, you know what, we are the landowners here in this town, and if we make a pitch to each individual person that has that land, we'll be able to set up a nice system ourselves, and the county can't get involved, they don't have anything to say about it.
I think the best thing that Lewis County would want is for the towns to take a more active role in outdoor recreation. Our experience is that they have no role that's ever complained.
Well, you're right so far, but that is changing, that mindset is changing. I don't know if you're aware or not, but a club that, on the other side of what Oswego, that was started out as a plain hunting club, has now exploded. I mean exploded to a large membership that is mostly ATV riders to go through particular parts of land to get to Tug Hill. And there's now a waiting list of over 200 plus people. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that is 200 plus family members to join that club just to get an ATV pass permit through that property for Tug Hill.
Sounds good to me.
There you go.
So I think we're, an effort here is to send an olive branch to the towns and say, we recognize, how important this is to our local economy. We recognize that the county is collecting, the sales tax, that is a large, economic benefit. And we want them to be involved and active and see recreation as not something that just simply costs money every time there's some damage, but as something that we all can benefit from. And if they had a well to go back to where, $100,000 or $50,000 of road damage for us, I mean, frankly, that doesn't even come before the board. We have $50,000 of road damage every time it rains hard, probably, But for a town, $50,000 of road damage is a major disruption to their budget. So having this well that they can go to, we're hoping is a way to make everybody feel a little bit more positive about.
And as Jackie said, this is the kind of thing where we could alter it in the future, so, towns like Watson or New Bremen that don't have a lot of trails, maybe there's some way
We have none.
it could benefit them.
Yeah, and can I also just add that
We're working on it.
this proposal was something that some of the town leaders asked us to consider and bring forward, so they get involved in the discussion.
And this is kind of a carrot too with the event law, I think,
Yep.
to try to get them all on board with it, so. So, just one more present, any other thoughts or questions on that? That's not on, or are we doing that today?
No, it's not.
So we'll have some more emails and discussions, I'm sure. So Ryan, go ahead if you want to talk about the highway equipment.
Yeah, real quick. Everyone is hearing about the supply chain issues and the backlog of parts and implements. As a rule of thumb, in local government, any government, we do not expend funds that have not been appropriated officially by the Board of Legislators. However, this is an extreme situation, and what I'd like you to consider, or at least give some brief feedback on, is that we have a 5-year capital plan for equipment for departments like solid waste, highway, recreation, forestry, and parks. We have things that we would like to purchase in 2023. The reality is, if we don't get those purchases in now, we aren't going to receive them at all in 2023. So even though the board has not approved officially the 2023 capital budget, I'm looking for a temperature check on, as long as we stay within the parameters of the 5-year plan that, the board has already seen year after year. What's the comfort level to start to make some purchases for 2023, even though we haven't even really started budget planning officially for 2023 yet. But we're just trying to stay ahead of the curve. So what are the thoughts on that? We wouldn't pay the bill until 2023, we wouldn't pay the bill until we receive it. But if we wait until the budget's passed in November, you're not going to see that piece of equipment until 2024 probably. So that's just something to consider that we've never really had to think about, at least in my time here. But something to consider now, so we're open to your thoughts on that.
What's it for instance on a piece of equipment?
What's something you had lined up for next year, Tim? The
So
loader?
one haul truck, one plow truck, a dozer is in 2023 for our plan. Right now, a plow truck is 2 years out. A haul truck is over a year, over 12 months. And I talked to 2 different suppliers for the dozer, and I'd have to order that in the next month to get it for next year. So everything is pushed. So our budget year and our purchasing year, even if we wait until budget's passed, like Ryan says, when I go and purchase those pieces, our budget will sit there, we won't use it, and we won't see this stuff until 2024.
How about you, Kip? What do you got in there?
Sorry?
Do you have any equipment that would be applied for this?
Yeah, yep, depending on the loaders, they're far out, depending on where you go and how they go, and trucks, the tractor trailers are just unbelievable fine. I'm a year and a half right now, if I ordered a truck right now, I'd be lucky to have it a year and a half. The tractor, the road tractor. Loaders, they're gonna be, I mean, depending on what you get for us, we could probably get some in, by the end of the year, if I'm lucky, if I order it now, by the first part of next year, but it's, you gotta move because they're going quick and they're not replenishing them. That's the trouble. It's kind of like the chips in the trucks, you know what I mean? They've got a lot of trucks, just no chips to put in them.
So we've already got the money in the budget every year for this. Eric? Yes?
Well, the money doesn't exist yet.
For
Well-
next year's budget, it doesn't exist, 2023.
I understand that, but in this year's budget, it's there. So we're not adding anything to the budget for any particular year.
It's
You
just
just may have to shift the years, depending on when they come in.
really what it comes down to is we'll be ordering and committing the county to make purchases in 2023 without having official appropriation from the Board of Legislators for the 2023 budget. That's why it's a unique situation. It won't be any more than what we would have spent, but typically I bring capital to you guys in September, and I bring personnel to you guys in October, and we have the full budget in November. What I'm saying is, if we can, make some of these capital orders before even I bring the capital plan in September.
Sounds good to me too, Ryan. So,
Mostly head nods.
I get
Do you want a motion or?
No, I don't think we need that. Just wanted to let you know that, I would feel uncomfortable committing budget funds to 2023 before the budget has been passed. But as long as you guys have a heads up that we're gonna do it, I think we're okay. So,
You have money in the budget this year. Are you getting anything new this year?
yes,
You can't
those
get-
things have already been ordered. Those things were ordered as soon as the budget was passed.
But you don't have
November.
No,
We have some. We received one new truck and then crashed it. And then, Tim got some of the shoulder equipment, I think, that we,
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky, but one of the things we've had to do is you take what they have.
Right,
You can't specify
no choices.
exactly what you'd like. You call them up and go, what do you have in your lot? If you have anything, we'll take it. And the problem is that inventory is out now because everybody's doing the same thing and there's just no inventory.
you'll notice we're driving, everyone knows that Lewis County drives the orange dump trucks and plow trucks, except for the one we got this year, which is black, because we couldn't get an orange.
And it's usually nice and clean.
Yes, they are. They're all nice. Yeah, they do. Tim's guys take very nice care of the equipment. So that's it for
All right, thank you, Ryan. Okay, now we'll move on to our dockets.
The first one is introductory local law number 2-2022, the amended local law regulating and permitting special events on county roads, trails, or other county property and on any town roads and property where the town has opted in, and setting the public hearing for July 5th, 2022.
Any discussion on this? Ms. Jonah? Joan, did you want to just quick go over the couple of changes from the last version that we had proposed?
Yeah,
Sorry to
so
put you on
you
the
will
spot.
see, although it's kind of, some of the language changes are highlighted, not really highlighted, but you'll see them marked. So this year's proposed amendment authorizes us to get the special event permits, even if it's a special event that's involved with the town, not county roads. In the event the town opts in to adopt this event law, and then we will follow through with getting the town involved and issuing the permit and going through all the steps that we follow under the proposed law on behalf of the town as well. And that kind of ties into the reason why we want to have that fund set aside for road damage as well. We did change the number of participants for, and this is on page 2 of the proposed law, for the number of people in a motorized event where an event permit has to be applied for, as opposed to a non-motorized event, which I think we had at 250 people as opposed to a motorized event where it's 150 people on the roads. We want to know about it. We gave a lot of discretion to the Director of Recreation, Forestry and Parks to determine for small events, like somebody's wedding or something that affects a road, whether or not that group has to get a permit, whether or not there has to be insurance for certain events. So we gave that discretion up to Jackie. For large events, they certainly will have to have some insurance. But again, we left some discretion up to Jackie for smaller events to determine how much, if any, that they have to maintain as the sponsor. We did keep a permit fee of $20, although again, we left discretion up to Jackie to waive that if she felt that, given the type of event it was, whether or not we really need to have them pay the permit, the application fee. To us, it's more important that we know about the events that are going on so that the towns, the county, EMS, law enforcement, they all know what kind of events are going on in the county. And then we do have a fine under section 8 for penalties. We have the range of fines being from $50 to $500 for a non-motorized event, and $500 to $1,000 for motorized events if somebody doesn't take the time to just let us know about the event going on and getting the proper permit. So those are basically the highlights from the changes of the event law that's in place now.
Thank you, Joan. Any questions from the committee? I think that this does address some of the concerns that were raised last time around, just changing, mostly changes to numbers, but also giving the director more discretion for waiving application fees and things like that. Right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Rescinding Resolution 232-2021 and authorizing an agreement between the County of Lewis and T&D Blacktop and Sealing for parking lot maintenance at the Lewis County Jefferson Community College Education Center at a cost not to exceed $10,600.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Appropriating additional funds in the amount of $396,000 in the county road accounts for the annual CHIPS program.
Any discussion?
This is the pothole money that the governor has been talking about in all of our budgets and whatnot. It's extra money for paving from the state of New York in the 2022 budget, so we are appropriating.
But it can't be used for potholes.
Yeah, just for What was the name of the program?
Pave our potholes. But it has to have a 10-year life span, so you can't buy patch with it, you can't pothole patch. But that's small detail.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Approving agreement between County of Lewis on behalf of Lewis County Highway Department and CNS companies for design and bidding professional services and to send out an RFP for the box culvert replacement project, County Road 40 over Tannery Creek at a cost not to exceed $24,000.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Stating support of efforts to improve probation and alternatives to incarceration.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Transferring and appropriating trail maintenance reserve funds in the amount of $20,250 to be used for equipment expenses.
Any discussion?
This is part of Jackie's, can you explain there?
Yeah, it was included in the annual capital budget, so we need to move the funds to be able to actually expend it this year. It also is coming from the trail permit portion of her budget, the separate trail fees.
And it's a pickup truck, right?
No,
Tractor then, yes. I wish it was in a truck then.
It's because we just talked about it.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Stating opposition to New York State proposed conservation subdivision design bill S 1145 and A 4074.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Transferring and appropriating E911 reserve funds in the amount of $76,000 to be used for current year expenses.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing an agreement between the County of Lewis and to be determined for recreational trail security, safety, and surveillance services at a cost not to exceed to be determined.
Any discussion?
I have a discussion.
Sure. Go ahead, Sheriff.
Is this in regards to security being used on the trail system?
Yes.
And how is that going to be implemented?
What'd you say?
How is that going to be implemented?
Well, the plan right now is to interview different security firms to see if they can provide private security personnel to go out and ride on the trails, potentially monitor hotspots, call in incidents if they see them, report them, and then also possibly provide education to people on the trails and just a deterrent effect by their presence.
And I don't want that in any way attached to the Lewis County Sheriff's Office, just so you're aware of that. They're not a part of our agency.
Correct.
And we don't want them to also be under the auspices that we're gonna be available at any time, without prior conversation or a detail set aside to be able to assist them, because they are not law enforcement. And we don't want to get that thought confused with the riders on the hill.
Sure, right.
I'm in opposition, I'll just tell you that right now.
Sure.
I think that the $120,000 could go on towards the sheriff's office, either for manpower or something better than hiring private security on the hill. I think you're gonna unfortunately run into a problem with that.
Do you want to just clarify one thing you said about if an incident is reported on the trail, what would be your office's response?
Well, if we have a vehicle free, a unit free, or anybody up there, we will find out what it is if we have that.
You would respond to a DWI if they saw a DWI or something?
They have no jurisdiction or.
I understand that, but if they told you about something, a DWI for instance,
I've called them DWIs.
would
I
you
mean, I'm not-
respond? Would the sheriff's department respond?
If we had a vehicle available and manpower, yes, we would.
Well, let me understand this.
Sure.
Will this work in with the sheriff's department's
No.
ATV patrol, or is this separate?
This
is
is separate.
Separate.
It's what?
It's separate. It's not part of the ATV patrol.
No,
It's not.
I know
yeah.
that. Are they all gonna be out there at the same time? I mean, but
Yeah.
we are paying for patrols. Are they gonna be active as well?
I think this would be in
In
addition
addition
to
to,
what the sheriff is able to provide.
The intent was to supplement the ATV trail enforcement that currently exists,
But not replace it, certainly not.
and not replace.
And we understand as well, just to be clear, this is not, they're not there to be law enforcement. That's not what they do. It's like the security we have at the DSS building or that we've had, you know, with the vaccine clinics. They're not there to make arrests and detain people. That is a job for law enforcement.
It's also, the intent is to be like a liaison between, private land issues where you get landowner that calls in and, you know, they're trespassing on his land, you know, provide us with someone that can respond to the landowner and become a liaison between, you know, our recreational, department and landowner.
Chairman, I think that money could be better again spent elsewhere. I mean, as far as the liaison goes, you're saying, why can't that landowner contact the sheriff's office? People have in the past, we've done that, we spoke to them. You know, I think I'm saying, it's just, what you're doing is you're circumventing the process of the citizen being able to call law enforcement and take care of that problem. Now you're putting a second layer there, which would make it more difficult.
Well, they can always call in. They can just report it directly to your office if they want.
I can't hear you.
They
sorry.
can report it directly to your office if they want,
Right,
regardless of whether we have private trail security.
County pays for and has law enforcement.
Correct.
Why are we buying more from somebody else instead of allowing the sheriff, giving the money to the sheriff to possibly have more patrols or another ATV unit that could do something? Do you think the kids up there tearing up the hill really care if a mall cop comes and says, that's bad, you shouldn't be doing that? They're gonna throw mud in his face and take off.
Right.
There's no respect there. The people who would respect the mall cop aren't tearing up the trails. You need somebody, you know, I think if you wanna control the problems up there, if you can increase the fines, and pound machines. Kids start tearing up trails and you take their machine until the court hearing, and you delay that for 2-3 months all summer. Word's gonna get out, don't tear up the trails. Don't screw with Tug Hill.
The challenge we've had has been in recruiting part-time deputies who can do patrols on the trails. We've got a policy that the sheriff's department can hire as many part-timers. It's hard to get people to do part-time law enforcement to go up on the trails. And you know, full-time law enforcement is very expensive to fill those positions.
Well, I understand that, but at least, I mean, is it can you hire part-time to do that?
we get people to come to the job, sure you can, if we get people to come to the job, we have right now, we've done a pretty good job of it. I think the problem, what's going on is that there was one or two incidents of some people who weren't satisfied with the service and the answer they got, and they whined the loudest to the legislators, and this is the best you can come up with, is to give them, to say, you know, private security, which you're selling them a sham. I mean, it's not law enforcement, it's not anybody that can actually enforce the law or take care of the problem. You know, it's between us and the state police and the DEC to take care of that. And I do agree with saying let's up the fines, you're 100% right. Last fall, we had a couple of people, I don't know if you guys are aware or not, but I handled this whole thing myself, happened to be in over where I live. And I wasn't on duty, I was home at night at 1 o'clock in the morning, I finally heard enough and I saw enough. I went out, I found them at 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up the residents of the camp, I impounded both of their 4-person side-by-sides that cost them $500 a piece. That made an impression. They haven't pulled anything since.
So why don't you do that more often then?
What's in them?
Could you do that more often when you have a problem with somebody?
Could I come out, you mean?
No, could your officers do that more often?
They do every chance they get. Yes, ma'am, they do every chance they can.
But they can't follow people in a vehicle. It should be a side-by-side or need to be of some kind.
Right.
The vehicles need to be left at the shop, get in the buggy and go.
If you can, you're absolutely right. And as a matter of fact, my residents, I did follow them, via the roads by listening to where the side-by-sides are going, how they came out.
But quite often your patrols are in vehicles, right?
No, most of our ATV patrols are out in the ATVs. Most of them are out in the side-by-side that we have. And the two we just purchased, thank you very much, by the way, for that. Much better piece of equipment. They've already been utilized already this year. So,
I'm glad to hear that.
yeah, they don't, I don't know where that was ever heard, that they ride out in the pickup trucks. We put them out in the ATVs and the pickup trucks as well. It's a combined effort of both. You see, once those ATVs hit a hard road, as we say, not a dirt trail or a seasonal road, hit the pavement, if it unfortunately becomes a pursuit, you're gonna want to mark the vehicle, all kinds of lights and noise coming, through that populated area.
I don't think that stops them either.
Doesn't stop with that?
Right, but it stops them from being able to pursue unless they hit it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen both. I mean, I ride the trails and I've seen both the ATVs and the trucks are full, so.
So to the financial question, what we're looking at is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, picking our spots so that we're really trying to pick the hot weekends where we know, we're gonna have more folks out there. We're looking at a preliminary budget of about $120,000 to cover the remainder of this year. For perspective, that would not cover the cost of one full-time deputy with benefits. So, and Ian's right, the part-timers, we'd love to see more part-time sheriff's deputies out there. We've been unsuccessful recruiting them. So this is, in a way to react to the fact that we haven't been able to get, the part-timers out there. Adding even one full-time deputy is only gonna, it's not gonna be able to provide as much coverage as, part-timers on the weekends. So I think that was how.
I agree with what you're saying. You're right, just like you brought the fact of buying equipment before, it becomes more difficult. We all know what's happened with the political situation across the country. And this was exacerbated us as well too in law enforcement. Young people don't want to come to the job anymore. Both our test lists just came out, and our HR person can attest to this. Hardly anybody took those tests. They say to pick the top 3, what are you doing like 2 people on a list? This is what's come down to, folks, but this is what we've let happen in our society. So, we're doing the best that we can, what we have, and I'll continue to do so. We try to recruit people part-time to come to the job. There's already officers who don't want to work any more than what they have to work because of the liability that they may incur to continue to other jobs other places.
Do you think HR, our HR department, could they do more to help you, I think, with your part-time?
No, I'll be honest, what needs to be done more? What needs to be done is this. Every single person, from a legislator to an assemblyman, to a senator, to a congressman, to a county managers, to everybody, you gotta start supporting the people who are already doing the job of law enforcement. And that hasn't been done.
Yeah,
I know you don't want
I
to
hear
hear
you.
that.
I'm just wondering
It's the truth.
today, what can we do? Can we use,
You
can we
gotta
try
start,
to assist your
start being
effort?
more positive.
Can we try to assist your recruiting efforts a little bit more? I want to get more part-timers in your department.
I would hope you do. Like you said, the problem is there's just a narrative put out by the media and politicians that these people don't want to come to the job anymore. They're scared.
Okay.
They don't want to be arrested for doing their job. That's the problem. That's what you have to take up over the next couple of elections, get the right people in office, do the right thing. That's joke against. It's gonna take time now. A lot more time than what we have coming.
Any more discussion on this? And Sheriff, thank you for your comments. I do appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it, to ask the questions and give answers. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay.
Nay, and I do appreciate you answering all my questions. but
Me too, thank you.
And I appreciate you
still have
asking,
reservations.
Phil. Thank you. Is that it for the dockets?
Nope, I have one more. Awarding bid and authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis and to be determined for the scale house project in the amount of to be determined.
When's the bid open?
Yeah.
Any
That
discussion?
bid opening is Thursday, May 26th at 2:00 PM.
So we'll have those TBDs filled in by June.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Do you have any motions?
No, there are no motions.
Motions. Any other business to bring before the committee? I think we're discussing the rails, trails, and financing rules, is that right?
Yeah, we were a little packed, as you can
Okay.
see today, so we moved recreation, which would typically fall under this, we moved it to, yeah.
If not, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Absolutely.
We're getting it down there. All right.
I need to,
All in favor, say aye.
Josh, to talk to Sienna, or,
All in favor, to adjourn.
Sorry.
Stand adjourned.
Health and Human Services Committee to order, please. First, I'm going to make a motion to approve the April 19th, 2022 Health and Human Services Committee minutes, if I can get a second. Jeff? Okay, and then first up for presentations, we have a presentation about housing needs assessment report.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear me as it stands, or should I speak into a microphone? Good. All right. I'm Hartley Bonesteel-Schweitzer, and I'm a senior planner with Labella Associates, and I am presenting the Lewis County Housing Needs and Market Analysis. This was something that is funded by New York State CDBG funds in order to help counties and municipalities better determine what kind of housing they should be focusing on for their grants and programs and incentives. So this is kind of an overview of where Lewis County is and where Lewis County should be headed. This was RFP issued last July, and we started work late September, early October, and this is kind of the culmination of that analysis. Maybe, yeah. All right, going to go through this really quickly, but just to give you an idea of what the scope of work was, we went through and did a broad reach of everything that has been done in Lewis County, what is currently going on with the housing, an overview of the demographic and economic data, the housing inventory, and a market analysis and kind of trends looking forward. And then we kind of concluded with implementation strategies and next steps. The process included working with the Lewis County Fair Housing Task Force, all of the members which are listed on the screen. Additionally, we interviewed key people tied to the Lewis County housing market to kind of get a better understanding of what was on the ground. I live in Watertown, so I'm local to the North Country. I understand rural housing markets, but it was good to speak with people who knew the Lewis County market specifically. Additionally, we looked at census data, we looked at American Community Survey data, and we did use proprietary software called Esri Tapestry Segmentation and Envision Tomorrow software, both of which take the data that's currently and then does projections into the future based on analysis, based on trends that are similar markets, and we kind of combined all of that within this report. So again, going to do a very broad summary of it. I believe everybody had, or the committee has a copy of the report. The report will be available after this presentation. We get into a lot more detail on a lot more topics that I'm going to talk about today, particularly along the demographic and economic characteristics in the housing stock, because we talk about population, household makeup, age, income, poverty, disability, homelessness, vacancy rates, tenure, how long people have lived in the types of housing, and we break it out by municipality. So if you're looking for something specific to a municipality, you're going to find it in this report, but I'm certainly not going to cover it here, or else we're going to be here all day. The preliminary findings. When we did that kind of what's going on now, what's on the ground, Lewis County agencies are out here doing the work. Snowbelt and Lewis County Opportunities, as I'm sure you're well aware, are wonderful agencies that are really putting all of the grant out there, pursuing grant dollars, they're implementing them. Lewis County Opportunities has a $2.5 million annual budget that's largely built entirely on grants, and they have 320 housing vouchers, the HUD Housing Choice Housing Vouchers, which go out into your community and that private landlords use. So that's what's happening for Lewis County Opportunities. Snowbelt Housing has been implementing $21 million into the community since 1982. That's more than $3 million annually. They also have 169 affordable housing apartments that are scattered site across the county that primarily serve elderly, disabled, and low-income residents of the county. They utilize various state and federal agency programs to implement housing, particularly related to improving current housing stock. So what I always say when I talk about demographics is demographics are housing trends, right? Whatever the demographic trends are, what are the population trends, informs what the housing market is going to need and what it's going to look for. So broad overview, Lewis County is the fourth smallest county in the state, 26,582 people, and it's declining slightly. Since 2000, the population has seen a negative 1.9% growth, meaning it's been declining that way. At the same time, Jefferson County grew, New York State grew. So there's been a slow but steady, because 1.9, that's not very much, but it's still no growth. There's about 10,000 households, and 2/3 of those households are married couples living by themselves. So again, you're going to see a slight population decline, married couples living alone, or just the two of them. So what does that mean for housing? Lewis County's aging. We kind of know that, but Lewis County's aging at a faster rate than the state. We're actually more than double the rate of New York State in terms of population aging. The high median age is, we are growing at, 2.9% versus 3.4% in age growth. What does it mean? High median age. The median age for Lewis County is 42. New York State is 38. Jefferson County's, which we know is skewed by Fort Drum population, but that's 33. So 42 is the median age, the middle age of the people in the county. As we already discussed, there's that slow but steady population decline, which kind of, the two of those inform the next one, which is a higher rate of elderly, disabled, and fixed income residents. You're getting older, you're not getting that new growth coming in, you're gonna have an older population. All of that has strong implications for housing. Not as many new homes built, and existing homes may not be repaired. Again, 46% of homes in Lewis County are at least 60 years old. 36% are at least 83 years old. So you're having these older homes where older individuals are living in, you're going to get things like deferred maintenance. You're going to get
36% are 80 years.
36% are at least 83 years old. And you're not seeing the new homes built. We look at those numbers as well. Jefferson County saw a 4.9% increase in new homes since 2000. Lewis County only saw 2.9. So we're building some, but we're not building very much at all. All of this kind of taken into account with the fact that people want to age in place, people want to be in their communities, they don't want to leave Lewis County. That's a trend across rural America, that people want to stay in their homes. They don't want to move into senior housing. They don't want to move into, a larger city to be taken care of in a kind of a transitional space. So all of that kind of bringing into some more demographic and understanding. This is going to be just a snapshot of what we're talking about when we talk about income and that other side of the demographics. So the median income in Lewis County is $52,000. The highest in the town is the town of Harrisburg at $75,000. The lowest is the town of Montague with $31,000. That creates kind of a unique housing market, right? There's high and there's low. And so when you talk about aging in place, there's kind of two different directions that the county is going in. Either you're having kind of wealthier retirees who are either choosing to stay in Lewis County full time, maybe they're here part time and they want to retire here, and they're at the higher end of the market. And then you have lower end of the market that's just kind of getting even more impoverished, right? They're becoming more fixed income, maybe have a disability, so you're kind of seeing a split in that housing market. This slide is just an example of some of the data that we have in the report. Housing burden means that you spend more than 30% of your income on housing. So while we see it makes sense, 48.6% of Lewis County renters pay more than 30% of their housing or their income on housing. But people with a mortgage who own are much less. People who own their homes have a mortgage, only 24% of those are paying 30% of their income toward housing. The number, I don't have this up here, but the people who don't have a mortgage, meaning they own their home outright, their housing costs are obviously much lower. They're paying for things like fuel, general upkeep, but it's still much lower. And this is important to note too, because they're only 12% of Lewis County residents are renters. 83% of Lewis County residents own their home. So the vast majority of people own their home, but those who are renting are even further into like the in poverty issues. Those are critical need that are the renters. So only 12% of the population, but a high needs population. The other side of this, interesting to note, is the median net worth of Lewis County residents. So, your assets minus your debts is really high compared to the rest of New York State and Jefferson County. The median net worth for Lewis County is $162,000. which means that 20% of Lewis County residents have a net worth between $250,000 and $500,000. So again, you're seeing an opportunity in that high market, and you're seeing a need in that low market. But this is, I know I threw a lot of numbers at you. There's a lot of numbers in the report. I'm just trying to give you kind of a little bit of a taste for, what we're talking about in this, the whole report. So taking all of that into consideration and looking at some of the projections, we're going to see, or the data shows that in 2040, there's going to be a slight increase in households in Lewis County. So it's going to grow, just about 500 new houses will be needed. Those will almost all be for renters. We're seeing that makes sense because the population is going to continue to age, and that people are going to want to be out of their homes, their single-family large homes, and they're going to look for smaller ones. So you see that in the other, but you're also going to see continual and interest in that standard and large lot single family, which is reflective of the rural nature of the county, right? You move to Lewis County, you live in Lewis County because you like the space, you like the large, plot of land that you can have and be here. So this is just kind of another snapshot of some of the future needs that we show in the report. And really what we're coming down to is kind of like, okay, so what do we do with all of this? What's the information? What's the next step? In order to have a healthy housing market, you have housing that meets the needs of all aspects of your population. And you kind of think of it like a life cycle, right? You're starting out, maybe you're moving here, you're getting out of your parents' house, maybe you rent for a little bit, and then you get a little bit of money, you have a family, you get a bigger house, you move into a bigger house, your kids grow older, they move out of the house, maybe you want to downsize, you have a smaller house that you transition into. That's kind of the life cycle of a housing needs that an individual might have. In a healthy housing market, that there are options at all those levels for people to move into. What we see in Lewis County is kind of and we call that churn. That's a churn, that's a regular flow of how these things go. What we see in Lewis County is kind of our churn is a little clogged. We don't have the kind of starting out homes for people, and we don't really have the homes that like the smaller, more easily accessible homes for seniors and people who are kind of in that transitional space in their life before they move into, maybe assisted living or need more care, but they just want less maintenance. They don't want a yard to take care of. We don't have those ends of the market. We have the single family homes that are large. They're often a lot to maintain. And that's what's happening here is that people are either forced to stay in those homes and not allowing other people to move into those who want those homes. So what we need to do, what this report recommends, is to kind of reinvigorate that churn, incentivize the other aspects of the market. And the housing market is comprised of three sort of components, right? It's the existing houses that you have, new construction that you want to build, and homes that are coming off the market because they are being either demoed or abandoned or condemned or something like that. So we have to have ways to address all three of those aspects of the housing market, because particularly in a rural housing, the answer isn't always build it and they will come. Right? You don't just build more housing. You don't just recommend build more housing and then you'll solve the problem, because who's paying for that housing? Are there economies of scale for that housing? Is there demand for that housing? And in a rural market, there's often not those things, right? So we need to get creative about what we're suggesting here. So the first aspect of that is to maintain existing housing stock. This is an example of the matrix that we have in the report. That's a couple pages long. This is just a snapshot of some of those things. But really what we're talking about here is better coordination. You have Lewis County opportunities, you have Snowbelt, you have the county, you're all interested in participating. Find ways to collaborate more and to share your resources more. One of the kind of best examples I can see here is that for each of these housing programs, the federal and state dollars, they have restrictions on where you can use it. You can't use that money if that house has already received other money, right? For example, you can't use the money if you've already had weatherization money put into a house. And so in talking with Lewis County Opportunities and Snowbelt, we realized that there's not a collaboration on those wait lists. So homes aren't able to leverage funding against each other because one agency already touched the house with their programs. So the other agency has a difficult time utilizing, their resources toward it. So we recommend, just as an example, to come together with your wait lists, cross-list them, figure out the ones that haven't been touched by any funding dollar, and you can leverage that money further. Therefore, rather than putting, maybe 5 or 10, you could put maybe even upwards of $30,000 into a home to truly do all the necessary deferred maintenance repairs that often these homes require. So that's just an example, but really to work better coordination, look at the ways you can share, and better communication. Everybody's so busy doing their own job that sometimes they forget to look up and figure out who else we need to be talking to and how better to make that work. The next aspect of this is create more types of all housing, but with a focus on the ones that seniors want to live in, right? We know Lewis County's aging. We know there's a lack of that kind of transitional space for seniors, but we don't want to tailor development to just seniors because we're rural, we're small, we don't have that much seniors to be building specific market housing just for that. So one of the answers we've looked at, and really a trend that's happened in the past maybe even 10 to 15 years now, are accessory dwelling units. And you probably don't call them that. You probably call them a granny flat, or hey, I'm going to convert my attic to another apartment, or my barn, I can have people live upstairs, or like another sort of unit that's on your initial house property. This is often, this is a lot of benefits, right? It offsets the cost of the house that you have. So you can use that money to do, deferred maintenance issues. You can use it to pay, if you're fixed income, that you can pay your heating bills. It provides a place for people just starting out, I want to move out of my parents' house, but maybe not that too far. Or people who are kind of coming towards the end and say, hey, I want to move into my little granny flat, my one floor, my accessible unit, and I'm going to rent my house out to a family that needs that space. So it provides a little more flexibility in the housing market. So we're recommending that the county work on incentivizing that type of development. We did an audit of the zoning laws, and a lot of zoning laws don't touch these, don't encourage them, and there's strategies to do that. You can kind of, get the word out and have it provide incentives for that kind of, if you're doing infrastructure hookups, you can do a discount for something like that. You can freeze property value assets for a period of time to incentivize that kind of private sector development. But that's really going to happen. It's going to be scattered site. It's going to be, kind of homeowners wanting to do this on their own. Again, not bad to explore senior housing project. There's a lot of new funding for housing money out there on programs, kind of innovative strategies. Lewis County is not unique in the fact that you're rural, you're aging, and you have seniors that want to age in place. So we anticipate seeing more funding sources come available to allow for these sorts of types of development to be built. Additionally, we want to kind of expand some of the programs you have, create more types of housing. There's a new Biden's housing strategy just released yesterday, really pinpoints specifically accessory dwelling units and more manufactured housing. Lewis County has about 14% of their homes are manufactured housing, large population that lives in those. We should be leveraging those assets and creating more ability to have people replace those as they see fit. And then don't forget that market rate housing. Like we said, 20% of Lewis County have, assets that are between $250,000 and $500,000. Let's figure out how to incentivize those individuals to move out of the houses that they're living well below their means in, right? Let's encourage that kind of development by doing things like reducing fees for infrastructure hookups, freezing assessed home values for a period of time. It doesn't have to be forever. It can be for 5, 10 years. There's programs that allow this entities to do that. Expediting permits. We know there's a short construction season. If we can figure out ways to make this easy, make it really business friendly, make it encouraging people to do that kind of development on their own. The reducing the fees for infrastructure, I just want to reiterate, the county might not own the infrastructure, but they can encourage the municipalities to do some sort of discount there. So that's, again, the county can kind of encourage municipalities to do that work alongside. Let me just see where I am. And then that last part of the housing market, we talked about, we want to improve existing housing stock. We want to create more types of housing, be flexible. And then we have the last kind of prong is those homes that are already out of the market. We want to reduce the amount that are taken off the market. We want to bring them back into the tax rolls, bring them back online. There are a couple strategies to be done here. The one I think is quite interesting and more low-hanging fruit is a county housing trust fund. And that's a program that New York State, and actually I think it's a federal program, but there's a New York State program for that allows for the county to tax particular sorts of development, can be pretty much anything, and use that fund to create a pool of funding that would then be able to be utilized to specifically address local priorities and needs. And the trick with that one is that that funding does not have the strings attached that other federal and state programs do. So, you can come up with kind of looking at strategies that you want to promote. Maybe that would be something that would then freeze assessed values or do infrastructure hookups or something we just said, but you can use those kind of in tandem with each other to encourage that type of development and provide relief for homeowners who do want to improve their homes or do want to build new homes in the county. But that's, again, encouraging the private sector to do that work instead of relying on Snowbelt or Lewis County Opportunities to do all of the home improvement in the county. Secondly, and I know you guys probably know this already, but that land bank opportunity, New York State is still promoting the idea that you guys can come together and look at those homes that are off the tax rolls and bring them back on through purchase of them, either working with Snowbelt or another entity to revitalize them and reselling them, or selling them to a homeowner who, in good faith, is going to do improvements on that home. So again, we're really looking at those three kind of big picture issues of really looking at saying, you have an aging population, older homes, what are you gonna do? So, thoughts, questions, discussions?
Wow, that was very informative. Can you speak to rental vacancy rates?
Yes. So that's a great question, and a great point that the data is really hard on. So vacancy rates for seasonal is included in vacancy. So if you have a seasonal home, it's considered vacant when they do the analysis. And then under vacant, they have seasonal, other, whatever. So that is a component that we particularly see in a lot of those towns across the county that have more kind of seasonal liberation, and it kind of skews the data. But that's something that, we do kind of speak to that a little bit of saying, there are ways to kind of leverage against that. You have a strong recreational component that's really 4 seasons, in the county. So can you, doing something like utilizing short-term rental programs or opportunities to take some of those homes that are already off the tax rolls, bring them back on via short-term rental, and then, kind of leverage that housing stock into creating, being more stable. So there are opportunities with that. That's in the report. We didn't get into it today. Yes.
Harley, you talked about the typical housing market
Yes.
churn, people, buying a home and then wanting to downsize. Do you think that is a cultural reality here, or do you think that would be important for us to measure in our own community? Is that what older people want? Do older people want to downsize it, or do they want to, does age in place in Lewis County need stay in your big home?
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure that our cultural reality is the same as other markets.
That's a super good question, and that's something that Lewis County is up against. Let me find my sheet for that. But what people think about when they think aging in place is, yes, they think I want to age in my own home. I don't want to leave my house. I want to be here, and so there's opportunities to work on that too, right? Most of that is retrofitting your home to fit your new needs. Maybe widening the doors so you can have it be wheelchair accessible when you go into the kitchen or the bathroom, creating bars in the bathroom. And there are programs for those sorts of things. They can be expensive, particularly in older homes. So, that it's not, there's no silver bullet, but having that be one of the many options. The other thing we see in rural populations is that the type of senior housing available is not as desirable to people. So it's not that they don't want to move their house out of their home, it's just they don't know what the other options could be.
Or it's so different from what they're used to that it's not appealing.
Yes.
Going from a big farmhouse with 50 acres to an apartment in Loudville, it's not a choice that people are gonna make.
Exactly, and that's why I think that ADUs are a wonderful solution, because if they can say, okay, I still live on my farmhouse, I just live in a studio apartment that's adjacent to my large farmhouse, and my kids live in the farmhouse now, or I rent that farmhouse out, and now I get that passive income that pays for me and subsidizes my fixed income. And, it's a single floor, it's a lot easier for me to manage and clean, but I still get to live here. So figuring out ways to incentivize that type of development, I think a large part of it is education and awareness. Hey, let's figure out ways to tell people that they should be building those types of things, and having the zoning law encourage that. And again, it's still a little bit TBD on right now, but the Biden administration's kind of push on housing particularly articulated ADUs as a solution to a lot of kind of rural America's housing shortage, housing constraints. And again, when we say housing shortage, what we're really saying is that we don't have the right type of housing for our population that we currently have and will continue to have. So it's a mismatch that we need to realign. Again, like I said, when people think of housing shortage or when they think of this situation, they often think, well, we'll just build more housing, but that's not always the solution. So figuring out a strategy, figuring out programs that encourage that. There's another component of a mobile home replacement program or mobile home program that maybe that could be kind of an AUD that's a mobile home that you could bring onto site and say, hey, now you have a single floor home, you can live in this rural area for as long as you are able, and rent your house out to someone who is looking for a bigger home and wants to, have their family there as well. So definitely an issue, and it's a trend across rural America that seniors don't want to move out of their homes. So how do you incentivize that? And again, kind of multiple strategies, education, promotion, showing people what there can be. Any other questions or thoughts or?
Yeah, I'm glad I saw the last slide. I apologize.
No worries.
But land bank has been something that's
Yes.
been a top priority, for me. I just curious of your opinion. I don't think Lewis County is large enough to sustain our own land bank. I have been wanting the Development Authority to do a regional land bank. It doesn't seem to be within their current mission or 5-year plan, but, is Lewis County large enough? I mean, could we, how could we go about some tool like a land bank? Because it's not just a Lewis County problem. These properties are a problem across the Tri-County region.
I think, and full disclosure, I worked for the Development Authority up until last September, so I know exactly where you're coming from, Brian, and I think I would tend to agree. I'm not sure the Development Authority is ready to jump into, land bank market right now, but yeah, I would say, it's a strategy that other entities are navigating as we currently see, and I think kind of that we've seen the growth and initial expansion of these houses, the land banks that, when it was first kind of introduced, everyone jumped to do it. So Lewis County would be at a benefit to kind of say, okay, you've been doing this for 5 years now. How has it gone? How does it look? What are your successes? What are your failures? What would you recommend from in a more rural context? I know that Tompkins County, Ithaca area, I think has a land bank, and that's maybe more similar than comparatively to like the Syracuse land bank. That's a very different type of market. I think it's collaboration with your municipalities. I think it's figuring out which ones have that high vacancy, non-seasonal, those homes that are off the market. And some of those into the data I'm looking into in the report, there's some high, particularly in your villages, because you're seeing older homes that are actually being abandoned, or, people leaving it, and the deferred maintenance is so high that they're just no longer considered part of the housing market. Again, this is a trend that's consistent across large swaths of rural America, right? This is not unique to Lewis County, and I think that's your key, really, is that because you're not unique, you can look at best practices from other places. So we tried to allude to that in the report, but I would say, yes, you're definitely on the small side, which is why if I were going to take something, I would pursue the Housing Trust Fund first. I would think that's kind of a more low-hanging fruit. If you could figure out where you could maybe get a little sliver of kind of resources that you could then kind of slowly pool, and then you don't have to make a separate legal entity to manage it. You don't have, this board could manage what they saw and how they wanted to allocate those resources. So maybe you do something like you encourage short-term rentals and then you tax them in a slight bit, and then you take that money or you move that from the bed, you take your bed tax and you re-put it into your housing trust fund. Something like that. One of the things we touch upon in the report, not to belabor short-term rentals, but I do think there's an opportunity there for Lewis County because we don't have any hotels. And
We do tax short-term rentals, but not very successfully.
And I would then, consider strategies to expand that and promote, that as an opportunity because studies show that if there's not the housing, people just don't spend the time there. But if there is the housing, people will spend more time here, which kind of brings that dollars and then kind of rotates that through in terms of they go out to dinner and then they, spend time longer. So that's a way to generate revenue that they'll maybe assist in some other way. Any other questions? I think, touching upon seasonal vacancies, which is a really interesting component of Lewis County, and then the aging in place issue, and then, figuring out kind of strategies is kind of, those are the questions. Figuring out how to navigate that moving forward will be kind of an exciting opportunity, particularly with the absolute glut of housing money that we have right now. So I will say that you're really at an interesting time for looking at housing programs as a county. And I think there's, particularly when you have Lewis County Opportunities and Snowbell as really interesting and willing partners in this market with you. That was, so kudos to them and kudos to you guys for kind of figuring out how to navigate this moving forward. Awesome. Any other questions?
Very interesting.
So my contact information is in the middle. My co-colleagues Chris and Kyle also assisted me on this, and if you have any questions, forward them to Cassie, and happy to help, happy to answer them, and hope you guys are able to utilize this in making further decisions for your strategies for your county.
Thank you.
All right, thanks guys, I really appreciate all your time.
And Cassie, you put the grant together, right?
Yes.
It says so. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome, and there's copies of the final report.
Yes.
On the table for everybody.
Awesome.
Grab those as you see, and we'll, we can get that on the website and have that available as well. So, all right, well, thank you, everybody, and wonderful rest of your day.
Here, I can go 5 minutes. Talk about public health relocation concept.
Okay, I don't have any materials, so I can keep it very quick. We have an opportunity, I believe, to do a little bit better by our public health department in terms of space. Currently, they are in the hospital. We rent space from the hospital for $90,000 a year. The hospital is tight with space, as we know. The hospital has currently allocated space on 3 different floors and in 2 different parts of the building for public health. So their office space is a little disjointed at the moment. Furthermore, we've been allocated 3 fellowship positions from New York State. There's no doubt in my mind that post-pandemic, the federal and state governments are going to put more money into public health, more mandates into public health, which probably means more staff. And I think it would behoove us to put public health in a situation where they're at least all in the same building together rather than split out into 3 or 4 different parts of the hospital complex. What we're proposing has a lot, there's a lot in the air, but I wanted to at least get the concept out to you guys. TLS, Transitional Living Services, owns the Lowville Commons, which is the brick building across from Stosh's and across from where that fireside was. TLS has applied for a transformation grant from New York State. We've also included this program in the last 2 years of DRI, Downtown Revitalization Initiative money. That's the $10 million for Lowville. We've included this initiative in the last 2 years of grant applications for that. What TLS would like to do is turn that building into a one-stop shop for human services. So TLS, the ARC, Credo, and Mountain View would all be under one roof at the Commons. And the reason they need a grant for that is because the current office space does not match necessarily the needs of all those organizations. So that's what they're looking to get a grant to do. If they are successful and they're able to turn that TLS space into a one-stop shop for human service agencies in the county, that would mean that the small building that currently houses Mountain View and Credo, which is right up past the hospital on the right. So you go past the VFW, you go past Lewis County Search and Rescue, then you've got the hospital. On the right is a building there that hosts Mountain View and Credo. That building is actually owned by Lewis County. We still, we got funding through Oasis for that building, so it has to be used for human service type activity. What I would propose is, if TLS is successful and is able to renovate that building and pull the human services departments together in Loudville, that would be a lovely place in a county-owned building right next to the hospital. That'd be a perfect place for Lewis County Public Health and their growing staff could fill probably the entire building. So it's not something that's gonna happen this year. Maybe that might happen next year, but really kind of the whole idea hinges upon the success of TLS getting that grant with the transformation funds, or Loudville getting a DRI, which would then give them the funds to make that transition. But it's something that has been talked about at Priorities Council with Jenny a little bit. It's something that's been talked about, a little bit with the hospital. Eric, there's a lot of folks that have been talking about it. I don't know as if we've ever formally brought it to the board to let you know that this is something that the community has been talking about. So I wanted to make you aware that this is something that's potentially in the works. From my perspective, if TLS is able to get that grant, I think it would be a great move for public health to get them all in one building, one floor together, under one roof. So anyway, that's kind of what's going on behind the scenes. There's no action required right now, but are there any thoughts or discussion on, that possibility?
That sounds like a great idea.
That's all.
That's close to 5 minutes, so, okay. We can move on to dockets.
The first docket is approving renewal agreement between Lewis County Public Health Agency and Bernie Bus Tours Incorporated for transportation services required for preschool special education program.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. Carries.
Authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis on behalf of the Department of Social Services and Greater Syracuse Moving and Storage Company for transportation and equipment disassemble and reassemble moving services from the Stowe Street Human Services Building to the Glenfield School Building at a cost not to exceed $158,804.34.
Any questions?
Do you know when this is gonna start again?
Yep, so we have told Betty and Crane that we will turn over the Stowe Street building to them on September 1st. Our goal, however, is to get it turned over to them sooner than that. I would like to see us be able to turn it over to them by the first or second week in August. That would give them more time to get going.
So you're planning to be out of there maybe by the first week in August?
We're gonna do our very best.
That's fine. Just curious.
Contractually, we have till September 1st, and contractually, they can't get in till September 1st, but maybe we might be able to get in early.
Thank you.
So, we're going to be moving about 100 employees over the course of 2 weeks. So, we're not stopping operations to move. So anybody that needs to be served at DSS can walk in the door, either of those 2 weeks during the move and get served. So this is a large amount, but it's because this company is working with us to keep our operations going while we're moving. And don't forget, 75% of this is paid for by the state. We'll pay only 25%. Our moving budget was $80,000, so we're well within that budget.
Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries.
We have one motion, and it's a motion to authorize Purchasing Director Brian Hanno to send out an RFP for leasing the new section of the Glenfield School property.
I will make that motion. If I can get a second.
Okay, any discussion? Well, I don't know what. Oh, did you guys read?
I don't know if
So
I
I'm
said
getting to it. Okay. So there was some thinking that hand in hand, we used a new part of the building of the Glenfield School to open a second daycare location. They have informed the county that that won't be possible. So now, I would love if maybe somebody else could come in and do a childcare, but it could be utilized for something else, so we're hoping just put out some feelers to see instead of it just sitting there. And the long-term plan would be to turn the building over to the IDA. This is kind of just while we still own the building.
So it's all set up, it's a great little wing. Unfortunately, at relatively the last minute, we're not gonna be able to partner with Hand in Hand. If there's another childcare agency in our region or that wants to start a business in our region, we've got the facility through American Rescue Plan funds, we've got the money. We just simply need an organization that's willing to make a very small investment in Lewis County, work with us. So we'll put out an RFP and see what we get.
And then all in favor? Aye. Opposed, nay? Carries. We don't have any executive, or we do?
We do have an executive session. Do you want to wait until, since we're kind of running late, wait at the very end?
I will just say before we close this, that there is a blood drive today happening right now at Beaver River School, and one Friday at Loudon Mennonite. So blood supplies are still critically low. In the summer, there's traumas and blood supply is always desperately needed, so if you can donate blood, please do. Motion to adjourn. Second? Okay.
Either or.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've been, we do run our meetings. We call the Finance and Rule Committee meeting to order.
Excuse us.
Bang together.
All right, first thing I'd bring up is I need a motion to approve the minutes.
Can I make that motion?
Yes,
All right.
very good. Do I have a second? Got a second? All in favor, say aye. Approved. We have a presentation, Lewis County Procurement Policy, from our purchasing director, Brian Hanno. All set, Brian?
Just quick, won't take much time.
You learned.
Yeah. So everybody has, should have in their packet, the copy, the draft copy, it's all highlighted. Basically, I just go through a couple of things. We just, reference to creating the purchasing director position. We're just establishing, the duties of the purchasing director. We're changing, one big change is naming, myself as the purchasing director, the responsible purchaser for the county. Ryan, as county manager, will act as the first alternate, and then the chairman of the board will act as the second alternate. So this gives one more extra layer there in case something happens. And basically, we didn't really delete anything. We added a lot just to strengthen our policy. Another good change is we're changing the process how quotes will be obtained and handled by myself, the purchasing department, which will take the load off the department to streamline the process. As long as we get the specs and everything from the department heads, then I'll take it that next step and save them the time of researching all the prices and see if it's on the state contract and whatnot. Adding more in the section about emergency purchase, just because it's a vague category where we just wanted more detail. Added a big clause on piggybacking, which is huge for a county like Lewis County because of our size, that we can really benefit and piggyback off either other counties' bids or state and national cooperatives. So that's gonna help us out a lot too. And then that just, we can use Omni on Sourcewell. We use Sourcewell a lot already for our equipment, for highway and solid waste. A lot of that kind of equipment is on a Sourcewell contract, which guarantees us what we get at the best price. And a big thing is we have added language to allow other agencies in the county to join our bid. So this can be the towns and the villages, that there's something they're looking for, we can put it all in our bid together and just save them the time and make sure they're following the state procurement policy. Because they have the same regulations we do, and who knows if they are following those regulations, but we're here to help them. And we have a brief mention about buying supplies that we should uniform wherever possible. Right now, I'm seeing a lot that each department's doing their own thing, that are buying the similar items from different vendors. We got to combine our buying power from one vendor to get the best price to help the county as a whole. And then just a brief section in the back about violations that, as purchasing director, I can only take care of what I see. If the department goes outside of the scope and does their own thing, that falls back on the department head to police, make sure they're following the guideline. If not, or just want to let them know that, we have this policy for a reason. So just briefly, a couple things. If there's any questions, let me know. But
What would be you got an example of the piggybacking?
Piggybacking off Onondaga County has bids out copy paper, because New York State requires if you spend over $20,000, you have to bid it out. So because piggybacking off of Onondaga County bid, which is a lot larger county, they're gonna buy more, they're gonna have a better price than say when we bid it out. So we're able to get a better price off of that than doing it ourselves.
And you'd be monitoring.
Yeah, every year, you gotta keep track of when that contract expires and then see what the new one is, so we know that we're still getting that price, and maybe we can pay back off Oneida County next year. We can shop around and play the bids out there to make sure we're getting the best price.
And you'd be looking for that type of thing.
Always, yeah, right, the main things, because I have a vendor list of where we're spending our money and trying to see what we're buying from them and make it better. So it just helps our size, our buying power. So that's huge for Lewis County. Any other questions?
I would just add that we said the purchasing director would save their salary and efficiency in the first year. My bet is Brian's gonna save his salary and efficiency in the first 4 months.
There's a challenge.
No, we've already.
We're headed that way, yeah,
We've already.
And he's also, I can also say that he's just jumped in on, because we've had a lot of RFPs with Glenfield, and Brian's jumped on board, and we've already developed a checklist for the department heads, and everything is running very smoothly.
Just trying to streamline everything, just to make it more efficient. I think it's saving a lot of time.
Very good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation, Rails to Trails concept. Brian,
Thank
you
you.
got 10 minutes since you started late.
Come on, 15 means 20 for me, you can't cut me to 10.
Are you using the open?
Using this.
I'm gonna use this, yes. Can you help me click the link when I get to that slide? Sure. Okay, so Rails to Trails, let's get right into it. Rails to Trails are nationwide, so I was gonna spend the first few minutes explaining, kind of adding context to Rails to Trails, and then I went on YouTube, and of course, there's already someone that's done it for me, so why don't we hit that and we'll get a good summary of what we're talking about here.
Sparing you the ads.
Abandoned and unused tracks, but thanks to many of America's railroads went downhill in the 60s, leaving behind thousands of miles of abandoned and unused tracks. But thanks to the Rails to Trails Conservancy, these rails have been repurposed and transformed into open trails for some of the best hiking and biking in the country. CBS News travel editor Peter Greenberg is here with some of the most unique rail trail destinations. Peter, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Tell us how this started, what the Conservancy's been doing here.
Well, this actually started, you said, in the 1960s, and as these rail lines went out of business, these rail lines just stayed there, abandoned, disused, and disrepair, until the Conservancy really came along and started repurposing them. We're talking over 1,900 separate rail lines that are now rails to trails. That's over 22,000 miles of trails in the United States. It's a very unusual place.
You always bring up breathtaking views. Let's just get right into the list. And the first is the Erie Canalway Trail in upstate New York.
Yeah, this one's a long one. It may not be consecutive in length, but it's 315 miles. It's the old Mohawk and Hudson Railroad. And what's great about this, you can't go more than a mile without seeing either a museum or another historical site. So you don't have to do all 350 miles. Just do a 10-mile ride and you're in great shape.
And moving on your list is the Heritage Rail Trail County Park. I'm having trouble saying rail trail, so I just want to make sure I get it out right. County Park in Pennsylvania.
Actually, what's great about this is 22 miles long. It's the old Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, and the significance of this is Hanover Junction. This is where in 1863, a 4-train car railroad took President Lincoln to give the Gettysburg Address. And then sadly, 15 months later, the exact same 4 cars took his body from Washington, D.C. to Springfield, Illinois.
All right, we're staying in Pennsylvania now. The Schuylkill River Trail. This is near where I used to live, near Philadelphia, which takes hikers and bikers along some of the country's most historic sites.
Yeah, this is about 27 miles, and it starts actually in the inner city of Philadelphia and takes you all the way to Valley Forge in that historic park, which of course there's a colonial home there that was used as the headquarters for George Washington.
Yeah. Let's talk about the most popular trail in the country, especially for families, and that is the Elroy-Sparta State Trail in Wisconsin.
This is actually the first rails to trail, even before the Conservancy started in 1967. It's about 32 miles, and what's great about it is it's on the tracks that were built in 1873 from the old Chicago and Northwestern Railroad. It goes through 3 rock tunnels, one of which is about a mile long, and 30 converted train bridges. It's very cool.
Wow. Next we go to South Dakota, something called the George S. Nicholson Trail, which also has 100 converted train bridges and 4 tunnels.
Yeah, 110 miles long. And what's crazy about this, speaking of crazy, it goes to the Crazy Horse Monument. And it's the old Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad, which serviced the gold rush in the Black Hills. But here's the fun part. It ends, appropriately enough, in Deadwood, South Dakota, known for the place where Wild Bill Hickok was shot in a poker game in 1876. And if you're wondering where the phrase dead man's hand comes from, he was the one holding it.
This is obviously your shortest one, a quick 9-mile trail in Marysville, Kansas, the Blue River Rail Trail.
Yeah, this is 9 miles long in northeastern Kansas. But what's great about this is this was the site of the old Oregon Trail where thousands of Americans went west between 1840 and 1865. And it's also the site of the route of the Pony Express. There's even an old Pony Express station still there. I just hope they're not waiting for the mail.
All right, I don't think of hiking and biking when I think of Las Vegas, but there's a trail there too.
30 miles outside of Las Vegas, you're going to find a historic tunnel trail, which is great because this is where they blasted through the rocks, the red rocks of Nevada, to go to around Lake Mead and to get you to the Hoover Dam. Another great thing, 5 great tunnels there. It's really cool.
Those red rocks are just so beautiful.
Yeah, especially after you blast.
All right, Peter Greenberg, thanks for being with us.
You got it.
So, that was better than me rambling on about the history of rails to trails, but as you can see, 20,000 miles of trails in the United States, and that was in 2005, so obviously it's gone up since then. Rails to trails are not only national, they're also local. This is what's being built right now, and our neighbors to the east. We've got the Adirondack Rail Trail. Obviously, you can see from the map, it connects Lake Placid to Old Forge. That's in the process of being built right now. Biking and hiking trail in the summer and snowmobile trail in the winter is what is planned for this portion of Rails to Trails. Rails to Trails are also in Lewis County already. We have 4.1 miles of converted rail in Lewis County, and frankly, it's one of the best pieces of our trail system that we have. From Burdick's Crossing to Lyons Falls, acquired by the county in 2012, but obviously it was used since 1991 as a trail in that portion of the county. So, not only do we have a history of Rails to Trails, not only has the United States and our region adopted the Rails to Trails model, we know for a fact that Rails to Trails are strongly supported in our own community. We asked the question in 2019, do you support the development of more non-motorized trails for walking, biking, and hiking? 87% of Lewis County residents said they do, only 4% said they do not. Do you support the conversion of existing railroad beds or tracks to public recreation multi-use trails? 81% said they support, 7% said they do not. And also in 2019, the development of more ATV and snowmobile, so motorized trails, 74% said they did, only 8% said they did not. We asked the question again just last month in April. We asked folks to agree or disagree to this statement. I support county government efforts to convert existing railroad beds and tracks to public recreational multi-use trails, both motorized and non-motorized. Specifically, we wanted to make sure it says I support county government efforts, not the state, not the town, it's us. And specifically, we wanted to ask about multi-use for both motorized and motorized. The results are in. It doesn't matter how old you are, you support it. It doesn't matter how much money you make, you support it. And it doesn't matter if you're conservative or liberal, you support it. Now, it's important to remember, these figures are mathematically proven to be statistically relevant. It is not just the opinion of the 500 people surveyed. They use that, they plug it into formulas. JCC correctly predicted our presidential election outcomes here in Lewis County within 4 margin points. So they know what they're doing, they know how to weight the data and use the inputs to turn out real quality information. So what comes next in Lewis County? What we're discussing is a new initiative to acquire and convert the remaining rail lines in Lewis County for recreational use. There's 44 parcels across 3 sections of rail. And the bottom of my thing is cut off, but there's 4 basic portions that we're going to talk about. So the first is the village of Lyons Falls and Loudville. So we specifically want to talk about portions that are in the villages. You can see, the rendering on the right is from the DRI application for the village of Loudville. The village of Lyons Falls portion is basically already being used as a trail in some sense. People already come in and out of the village using that corridor. I put the property key and assessed value so that you can see kind of the parcels that we're talking about, and this will be published for whoever is interested to know exactly what what parcels we're talking about here. 10 parcels that are in the village of Lyons Falls or Loudville for a total cost of assessed value of $78,000. The other line goes from Loudville to Carthage. You can see on the map there, this was mapped out by our own GIS department. Starts in Loudville. In fact, it starts right at the Kraft Heinz facility, goes across the bridge through the town, up East Road, out to Casterland, and then straight to Carthage. You're looking at 14 parcels with a total assessed value of $252,000.
How many miles?
I can tell you how many acres. That's not helpful, I'm sure. I'm not exactly sure the miles.
I'd say about 14.
14 to 60.
Okay.
Lava the Krogan, that's the green. Same thing, starts in, across from Kraft, goes across, goes up to about the JCC Ed Center on East Road, splits and goes right, heads towards New Bremen, goes through Beaver Falls, and concludes in the village of Krogan. 20 parcels total for this section, $125,000, almost $126,000 of assessed value.
How many miles, Eric?
10 to 11.
Okay. Thanks.
I've got an Excel spreadsheet that I can give you guys that has additional detail on each of these parcels. It has the acreage. I guess the additional details the acreage, so not that addition. The final portion is the Lions Falls to the county line south. So you can see here it starts in the village of Lions Falls. Of course, north of Lions Falls is the trail that we already have converted to rail. That goes up to Burtis Crossing. So you're talking about the village of Lions Falls, right about at Dollar General there. That line will head south through Port Leyden, and then it eventually goes to Boonville. We're only talking about acquiring it to the county line, of course. Currently, this line is the only line that GVT utilizes in any sense, and they utilize it for storage of petroleum cars, which I'm sure the people at the southern end of the county really appreciate. Line after line of rusty, graffiti, empty petroleum cars lined up through their community. So, process and issues. We are working with an outside counsel to acquire these properties. In fact, right on cue is Brody. He's been working with us. The trail line will be multi-use, like the existing trail from Lions Falls to Burdick Crossing. To specify, the specific use of each section of rail has yet to be determined. We have not gone through and said, this mile is going to be for ATVs, this mile is going to be for bikes. This process of acquisition and engineering assessment and conversion will take many, many years to complete. This is not something that's going to happen in the next 3 years. We have, as you can see, there's several difficult sections where bridges and culverts will need to be completely replaced. We have lots of line, particularly through New Bremen and the Flats, over where Jackie lives, that are in, really bad shape. The fact that you can even get a locomotive over that is laughable, let alone a biking or, snowmobile trail of some kind. Is there any way to see the bottom of my slide? No. Just look at the talking points at least. What the heck? You zoom out. You go to the next one. No, forward. That process and issues. Is there any way to see the? Yeah, cut off the windshield. Yeah, see, it looks nice. Yeah, okay, there we go. Spilled off of your slide. I didn't spill off it. It looked fine on my computer.
Brian, I have a printed copy if you want.
Okay, yeah, there we go. I just want to hit the last ones here. So, to be clear, the county is eager to work with landowners. The final path of the trail is negotiable. If the trail goes directly through your backyard, as we know in one case it does, it splits people's, home from their barn, then it can be moved. The trail can be moved. That's not a problem. We want to work with people. I have spoken to one person who I believe represented the group from New Bremen that was, of particular concern. I gave them dates of when I could meet. I want to meet. We're open to meeting with anybody who wants to talk about this with us. We want to work with them. As I said, the meetings have already been offered. We will meet with anyone. Every single concern can be addressed. The line doesn't have to go straight. The line can curve. The line can go around hedgerows. We want to be flexible. Beyond that, it's going to take years for us to convert this fully into the end goal that we're looking for. So that's it from me. That's basically, the 4 sections that we're looking at. Some background on what Rails to Trails, means for the rest of the country and what it could mean for us. So, questions, discussion?
Would you envision maybe small sections at a time to ease into this and see how things work? And
I would think we would have to, because, there's gonna be a lot of this that is gonna require a lot of work, okay? And so just from a budget perspective, I don't see, this is something that I'm hoping we can work on over the next 10 to 15 years. So yeah, we're gonna have to take one chunk at a time and develop it as we go.
Obviously, I'm always about the budget, but I was also about proving ourselves.
Mhm. Right, so, if there's an area that is less concerning to folks than others, that might be the place to start. Show that, this is an asset we can manage. We already manage literally hundreds of miles of recreational trails in Lewis County. It is something that we have become quite good at over the last decade. I feel very confident in our ability to properly manage this and manage people's expectations and, manage the impact on adjacent landowners.
That's important.
Yes, it is. I agree.
So could I add something, Ryan, a lot of the early video with like the other places and then some of the talk we've had, it's really the multi-use aspect, the idea that we're open to new ideas for how to use these trails. And we administer, like you said, hundreds of miles of trails, mainly for ATV and snowmobile use. These trails would be prime for, bicycling, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, and that's not really something we've tapped into, and I think especially connecting villages together, that sounds like a great idea, and along with that would actually help to deal with a lot of the issues we talked about damage to property. Yeah, I think you're less likely to trespass if, you've got cross-country skis on your boots, and then also the noise complaints, which are totally very valid concerns, that's another component, not just thinking about it, this is something the community wants, but that's actually something that could lessen the impact too, the way that we actually do the trails.
I think that it's, in reality, each section of trail is probably going to be governed differently. There might be sections I'm thinking about, inside the village of Loudville, probably maybe not the best place for, motorized, equipment to be zooming up and down. That would be a great place for passive biking, walking, snowshoeing in the winter. I love the little 1.5-mile stretch from Croghan to Croghan to Beaver Falls. I mean, that is gonna be just a gem. If we can open that up and widen it and allow people to ride their bike and walk and even use motorized recreation through there. I think there's a lot of awesome possibilities for our community.
I think it was funny, we got a slide that showed kind of like the rails to trails after the last meeting we had. It was an email, and it showed people walking and biking on a trail. And then I think that's maybe what we have in mind, what it would look like. But then when the people that came to talk to us at the meeting last time they came, probably are thinking of something that looks like the slide that Jackie had up there with the big ruts and all the mud and like that. I think it's kind of a perception, we're looking at it one way and they're looking at it another way. We need to come together and, make it so it's what we think is what they think also, that we can convey that we're not totally thinking of a totally ATV trail or snowmobile trail through all their properties.
Usually good things happen when people work together.
Exactly.
May I add something?
Sure.
So from the housing report that we just got, this can be attributed to the stagnant population growth and lack of young families and individuals moving into Lewis County. I think that has to be something that we're always focused on, especially when we're talking about trails and recreation.
Tom? Just one other thing to answer Phil's questions about mileage, Phil. We know that the total of all those parcels that you looked at are between 35 and 40 miles. We have rough estimates of the breakdown, but, you know, they're just taking a Google picture and looking at a straight line. So they come to about 35 miles, but we throw another 5 in there because of how they move.
Or we can have Russ downstairs give you the
Yeah.
exact, take him probably an hour to give you the exact amount.
Well,
You know, we got.
that's good enough.
Okay.
I like the whole area responsible for stuff.
His estimates were pretty good, actually.
A
He's a
lot
numbers
of
guy.
bike riding.
He's a numbers guy and he bikes a lot, so he knows.
Any other questions or comments on this right now?
What is what's the progress on it? What is that?
We're gonna have Brody present an executive session on where we are in the
Okay.
steps for taking.
Why executive session?
Um,
Why executive session?
Because it involves litigation, potential litigation.
And the acquisition of property.
Yes,
Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
So I own a nice chunk.
do we have your name, please?
Larry Picola, a landowner along the tracks. I would ask that before you put this trail system to the middle of my property, because I have a camp on one side of the tracks and I'm building a new house on the other. Ask yourself, would you want this thing going through your yard?
Well, I guess there's a question right now, is that this is just a concept,
I know,
and would there be a way to go around it? Would there be an area where that section wouldn't be used? It's not necessarily all of the track, all gonna be used.
I own probably a land along a half mile of the tracks. He owns the other side of it. So I don't, my camp's on the river, my house is going out close to the East Road. And I bought that land and live in Lewis County because I like my privacy.
Well, maybe there'd be a section that nothing would be done.
Well, I just say, if you're gonna put it through my land, would you want it through your land, next to your house? Right now it'd be 70 yards from my camp.
Okay, so.
I would love a trail
Me too.
in my backyard. I would love it.
Well, everybody's different.
Yep.
And I don't. So,
Okay. Yes,
It's like 10 or 12 miles of protected wetlands there. There's no-
I can't hear words you're saying.
It's like 10 or 12 miles of federally protected wetlands right up to the edge of it. There's no way you can go
Right,
around it
well,
unless
this-
you're going
this-
down East Road.
This is something like, it's set up there, 3 to 5 years. This is something that's just being looked at. You know, if we come into something like that, we're gonna, well, okay. You know, it's not something that we're gonna jump into next week or next year. It's gonna take a long time to review, and again, I look at the YouTube, and it was all bicycle and hiking.
yes, nice and pretty, yeah.
There was no motor vehicles.
Right.
So there's gonna be sections that might appeal to a certain type, and another section that won't appeal to it at all.
Like Mr. Piche said, he doesn't envision motorized vehicles going through the village of Olive.
Right,
I
well,
should have the same right living in the country.
Yep.
And not have to listen to snowmobiles going by my house.
Yep. but it's gonna be a case where it's just looked at, and the total system is gonna be looked at. There may be an area that won't work, there might be an area that's gonna be cross-country skiing and hiking and biking, and you know, we definitely keep the landowners in the process. Okay?
Why would we put ATV trails or ATVs on the same trail that we do me walking or me riding a golf cart on? for me to get hit by something.
Well, this is gonna be something that's gonna have to be looked at.
And it's a different kind of a trail.
When we get
like-
closer, is there gonna be a spot where an ATV trail will hook into it? No question.
Andrea, I live next to that 4 miles of trail that the county currently owns, Lions Falls goes to Spurgeon's Crossing. There is basically minimal to zero conflict. I've seen people, and I've done the same thing myself, walking, hiking, cross-country skiing. I've seen horse riders on there, ATV, snowmobiles. Candy lives next to it, she's seen the same thing. I've seen ATVs pull over and stop if somebody's on a horse, or the same with snowmobiles. If they see you, they slow down and pull over. It's really remarkable how well everyone gets along together. And I'm not saying there isn't gonna be a cowboy out there that,
Well,
that
we just
uses
had
that,
that where
but,
one got rear-ended by the other.
what's that?
We just had an ATV get rear-ended by another ATV. The guy lied about who he is and where he's from. So there are issues.
I didn't see it. I'm
You're
just
lucky
saying
you
they're very
live so
minimal.
nice.
They're very minimal. Candy will
Yeah,
say the same thing.
I want the ATV permit, and you're right, people are very respectful. If they see somebody walking, they slow down or go right over and let you go by.
Well, you could have adequate width too, couldn't you?
Well, and there is, yes.
How wide is the trail then? What are we looking at then?
It varies from 50 to 80 feet.
We'd be getting the whole rail then. I mean, that's, yeah.
That's what the railroad owns, is 50 to 80 feet.
Depending on where it is.
Okay, we spent enough time discussing this right now with, in my opinion, it's just a concept to begin with. We're looking into it, and it's got a long ways to go. If there's nothing else, let's move along.
You gave him more than 10 minutes.
Yeah, well, it's hard to shut him up once he gets going.
My portion was only.
The first docket is adopting and otherwise treating local law number 2-2022, a local law continuing additional mortgage tax for mortgagees on real property situated in Lewis County.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Motion carried.
Amending compensation plan of the County of Lewis with reference to County Attorney Office to create one temporary intern position for 350 hours at $16 per hour.
Questions or comments? I have one.
What was that, Mr.?
You want to apply?
You want to work in John's office?
That was a slip of the tongue.
Come on down. Come on down, Bill.
Ryan's gonna hold the interview.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing section 5311 consolidated federal and state funding grant application for the Lewis County Public Transportation System for fiscal years 2021 and 2022.
Questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis and the ARC Oneida Lewis Chapter, New York State ARC, for transportation services for a 3-year period with the ARC to reimburse the county at a rate of $25 per hour in 2022, $25.50 per hour in 2023, and $26.14 per hour in 2024.
Questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Carried.
Amending procurement policy and appointing purchasing director as the responsible purchaser under the procurement policy.
Questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Carried.
Transferring and appropriating capital funds related to the facilities projects in the amount of $691,158.96.
Questions or comments?
Yeah, this is, when we've been presenting on the financial plan for the project, really since day one, we've talked about utilizing the funds that are in 2 existing accounts. One is the DSS account which had about $270,000 in it. Another is the the highway fund, which for years you guys put 200 grand a year in a highway roof account. Both of those we're liquidating, putting it into the project account since, that's what they were saved for.
Good.
So,
Anything else? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Carried.
The late docket is authorizing an agreement between the County of Lewis and Spectrum Northeast LLC by its manager Charter Communications for fiber coax broadband infrastructure expansion to passings in the towns of Krogan, Denmark, Watson, Lowell, and Gregg.
Any questions or comments?
So this came out of the ad hoc broadband committee. They recommend that we go forward with this partnership with Spectrum to provide broadband services. And Joan, did we email these guys a list of addresses or no?
No. I
So
didn't
we'll
send
get you
that.
the list of
Yeah.
addresses that are gonna be covered by this agreement.
And the funds came from,
The funds came from American Rescue Plan and the $1 million that the county set aside for broadband for fund balance. So between this project, the Northern Border Regional Project in Denmark, the CDB project in, CDBG project in Lionsdale, and the CDB project in Diana, we will have in 2 years, 1 year, basically expended all of our broadband money and covered, I forget what the final tally was, but
Roughly 2,300 passings.
who were unserved before. Out of that, showing by the broadband
300 plus.
past new households.
Any further discussion?
One of the first ones I know.
That's
All
a
in favor,
switch.
aye? Opposed? Motion carried. You got any more?
So,
Nope, there are no motions.
Okay, I think we need an executive session for a couple different.
yes, Mr. Chairman, we need an executive session for the IT director to bring the committee up to date on a security matter. We need an executive session from the Health and Human Services Committee to talk about a personnel matter and the possible discipline of an employee. And we need the executive session to have our outside counsel advise this committee and the rest of the board on the current affairs and status of the Rails to Trails eminent domain matter and potential acquisition of those properties.
Okay, I get a motion to go into executive session. Josh? Second?
Yeah.
Jeff? All in favor, aye? We are in executive session.
Anything to be voted on after?